Hello, everyone, and welcome to another beautiful interview for BWS Awareness Day. This is our eighth annual summit. I'm Bree. I am the co-host here with Honey of BWS Awareness Day Facebook page and website. And today we have Kady here. She is a BWS mom. So, Kady, tell us a little bit about you and just the starting journey of your BWS, there we go, BWS journey. Tongue tied.
Our second child, Alice, is our BWS kid. She's 5 now. She'll be 6 in June. So I guess from the earliest kind of differences in my pregnancy versus my first pregnancy, it was actually my only pregnancy. I have 3 kids now, but it was the only pregnancy that I had gestational diabetes. And so I haven't done any more research, but I kind of wonder, like when they're born, they have a higher like blood sugar count. So I was kind of wondering. I haven't looked into more of that, but that was weird because I've never been, had the gestational diabetes before.
Right.
And then towards the end of my pregnancy, we decided to do a C-section because she was measuring very large for her size and like timing. And so she actually came 3 weeks early and she was 8.5 pounds. So she
Oh,
was a big
wow.
baby.
Yeah.
So that was another kind of like weird thing. And then, so when she was born, the first thing was my umbilical cord, or the umbilical cord. It had a ton of, it was called Wharton's jelly. I mean,
Mhm.
it was like the thickest umbilical cord I've ever seen in my life. And even my husband was like, that is so strange. But like nobody even
Right.
made any sort of things. But like later on, I researched it and that can show chromosomal abnormalities, but nobody even like
Right.
said anything about it. So that was the first weird thing. And then so feeding became pretty difficult because we started noticing like her tongue was very large. And so she was not able to latch, she was not able to feed. And we had to try multiple bottles just to get her to be able to feed. And like I said, they were constantly checking her blood sugar. We had to wait actually longer than normal in the hospital because it wasn't regulating. And I think a couple of days it finally started to regulate. So those were kind of just like the first weird things. And then at our first pediatric um, appointment afterwards, um, we noticed that her left leg was way shorter and skinnier than her right leg. And well, we had already noticed it, but we brought it up at the pediatric appointment. And our pediatric doctor was like, oh, there's really nothing to be worried about. Like, we'll just monitor it. I'm sure it'll, all work itself out. And I was like, okay, I just had mom gut feeling that that probably wasn't the case. And so I, I just like the tongue, like just all these things were kind of just like not really settling well with me. And so I started researching all the different symptoms that we had had with her. And that's when we found Beckwith Wiedemann. And so
Yeah.
I called that same pediatric doctor and told him, like, hey, I think this is it, blah, blah, blah. And he kind of just like, first of all, he didn't know what it was. He
Mhm.
had never heard of it. And so I was like, well, we're probably going to look for a different doctor now. So I did. Actually, a friend of a friend had referred a doctor that she really liked and worked with. And so we went to him. And I told him all of the things, and he was like, have you ever heard of Beckwith Wiedemann syndrome? And I was like, oh my gosh, like, thank you, Lord, because I was like, oh, yes, I've heard of it, researched it. Like the other pediatrician said he didn't know anything about it. So he was like, I'm going to refer you to a geneticist. She's going to go get her testing done, and we'll go from there. So, it came back, it was BWS. And so that's when they're like, these are the things that come with it. There were 2 different types, and she had the one that was better, I guess you would say, because it's not going to be passed on versus the other one that could be passed on to the other children, or like we could have more of or whatever. Anyway, so they were like telling us you're going to have to start your scans, and like these are, you have a higher rate of the Wilms tumors, and we're just like, whoa, we just thought it was like your basic these things. So
Yeah.
we found out that her leg situation was her hemihypertrophy. And it is just her legs. So we go to
Oh,
a
okay.
podiatrist. And so for the first few years, she was able to wear a wedge in one of the shoes. Now she walks. She doesn't even know she has like the issue. But when she turns 9 or 10, they're going to shave her growth plates in the longer leg to let her shorter leg catch up. So
Oh, okay.
was hemihypertrophy was the leg issue. So then from there, we had her first blood work for her ATP markers, her tumor markers, whatever. And they were like, normal ranges below 9. I think hers were like 140 something. And so they were like, well, we need to probably go ahead and do the ultrasounds. And so her first ever ultrasound showed a mass on her adrenal gland. And so that was in December. So she was 6 months old. And
Hmm.
then we went to multiple different doctors. We did CT scans, we did MRIs, we went to 3 different places just for some second opinions. And all the radiology technicians said that it was neuroblastoma. And so we were
Hmm.
like, oh, we're already there. We're like thrown into the
Wow.
trenches, and it's our first ever like labs. And so we scheduled her surgery. She had her surgery in February, and they removed it. And like I said, everybody said it was cancer. And then when we got
Oh,
the results back, it was benign. So that was
oh,
a
good.
huge relief. So
Hmm.
that is kind of, and so she's used to all of her blood draws, and she turned 4, so she doesn't have to do those anymore. But we still
Good.
take her every 6 months now for her ultrasounds. And then there is something else with one of the muscles or something in the heart. So she does see a cardiologist every year and a half. And then we go to her podiatrist every year and a half to monitor that. Um, but yeah, it's been kind
Wow.
of a wild ride.
Right. Oh my goodness. And it sounds just from all that you've been sharing and all the different research you did, bringing it to a new doctor that understands too, and then all the specialists that she is in,
Mhm.
your advocating is
Yeah,
just off the charts. Like
yeah, yeah. It
that
was
is
it was it was
wonderful.
wild. It was pretty crazy. So
Yeah.
here we are. I'm glad we found out what it was, and I'm glad that I just thought it wasn't a coincidence that the friend of the friend knew like the pediatrician we needed to go to, and I was like, oh, thank God. Like, yeah. So
Yeah, it's like a breath of fresh air when someone's like, "Oh yeah." Like it was so I'm 37 now and I was born with it as well. And so right now I actually see a urologist like only as needed, but
okay,
I would there's my dog. I thought he was going to sleep. Now you're crashing the interview. Sit down. There you go. But so I see a urologist, but he actually sees a lot of Beckwith-Wiedemann in children. So when I
interesting.
first had my appointment with him, he was talking about that, and he's like, I don't even. They don't have to come back to me as an adult, which is great. That's awesome.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
very rare. It's very rare to have that, but it was cool because he was actually super interested in it. So it's nice when you have
nice.
someone who's also like geeking out about
Right,
it.
right, right.
So yeah,
That's
that's really
crazy though,
good.
because it was in her adrenal gland, and so the oncologist that did the first scanning and all that stuff, I guess we do have to watch her hormones and say, like with her kidneys and stuff like that. I mean, we haven't ever thought about the urology part of it, but he said like her hormones might be a little off just because of that. But so far, we haven't had to look into that. So
Yeah, if she was getting like I was getting like you as I was growing older, more UTIs and
okay,
then
okay,
like things like that. That's
okay,
when and I was born and we already knew like when we did those scans and the ultrasounds that my kidneys just didn't filter properly.
interesting. Okay,
So if they haven't if they did the scans and they're monitoring it that way too,
right.
you're good.
Okay,
Keep going. So it's very it just
interesting.
depends. It's such a spectrum.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think I had one lithioscopy to get a bunch of them out, and that was in 2023. And I was so grateful because we tried to do one in 2019, but it wasn't successful.
Gotcha.
So when he went in there, like he was like, it was like a gumball machine.
Oh
Like
my
I
gosh.
was like, that's insane.
That's crazy.
But since having that surgery and then also going to a nephrologist for kidney stuff, I have not had a UTI since last March of
Oh
2024. So
wow.
it's been like a whole year. So
Wow.
like I am like, and I used to get them like very
That's
often.
awesome.
So like even when you're like 36 years old, if there's
Yeah.
something going on, you can get to a place of, yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
I just was like, oh, I gotta relate in that way. And then let's see here. What is a tip or piece of advice that has really made a difference for you and that you feel others may need to hear? And it can be for caregivers, as you being a
Mhm.
mom, even for kids that might be going through BWS right now, whatever you would love to share.
Um, I feel like first of all, listen to your gut because we call it mom gut for a reason. Like if you think something's off, it's probably off for a reason. And do your like obviously we did our own research for a lot of it, and then like with Alice, we have never told her she has a disability. We've never told her she's different. We've just treated her the same, and like she
Oh,
doesn't even know.
yep.
She's crazy. She's our middle child, and so we actually on Sunday we're like, all right, Alice, I think you're old enough to kind of realize, like, we can talk about this day we use to celebrate, your disorder, your genetic disorder,
Oh,
something like that. And she's like, what's a genetic disorder? And I was like, it just means you're special. She was like, okay.
yeah.
So, I mean, she
Mhm.
has no clue. Like, and really, it is pretty, like, just physically obvious her legs for sure, when she wears shorts, but she has no clue. And I mean, most people don't
Yeah.
even realize it because she's just adapted to it. She just walks on her tippy toe and she's got some mad calves, but yeah, I mean, I guess advice is just, treat them, don't treat them any different than any other kids. Like they won't ever know. Luckily, we didn't
Yes.
have to do the tongue reduction surgery. We were really worried about that. But she does have speech. She goes to speech therapy now. Um, but
That's great.
luckily, it wasn't anything major. Like she does have speech, but I mean, like that'll work itself out with
Oh,
time. But
100%.
at least we
And
didn't have to.
early,
Yeah.
yeah, early intervention is great, and you've done that in all the different
Yeah.
areas that she needed. I also was lucky enough not to have a tongue reduction, but my mom had to do a special thing with feeding,
Yes.
and then I'm trying to think here. I'll have to ask her if I went to those. I'm like so interested now. I
Yeah.
don't know all the things, but like, yeah, I think especially in this day and age too, it is so common for kids to get speech,
Oh,
OT,
yeah.
physical
Yeah.
therapy, especially from also we went through COVID, so there's a lot of
Right.
delays there. But
Yeah.
like he doesn't have BWS, but my son goes to speech and speech
Okay.
feeding and
Nice.
OT for other reasons.
Okay.
And so I just feel like it's good to it's awesome to have this conversation because it's so much more common that I feel like even as kids, if they're like, oh well, I go to someday if
Yeah.
they're like sharing, I did this too, or I did this too. And I was the same way. I don't think I knew. My parents didn't really tell me till I was probably around that same age. Like I knew I had more appointments at the doctor than my friends, but I didn't think anything of it. And my mom and dad were both in the medical field, so it was like, cool, we're going to the
Oh,
hospital
wow.
they work at. Like,
Yeah.
so I get to visit some pe new people. So I think it's just, and it's one thing I'll say too is like because they're within the medical system, so when they're early, they're learning just from you modeling
Right.
that when they go into adulthood, they're going to be understanding the system better,
Right.
understanding how to advocate because you're right there and you're doing that in front of them. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to ask you how crazy, like from when you had it, like how did since it wasn't very well known, like even now, like they've done a lot more for it. Like there's multiple people that are advocating now, but like, 37 years ago, like how was it? How did your parent, I know you said they're in the medical
Right.
field, like were they able to just research and find it that way?
So for some reason, whoever the doctor was there, they actually got the diagnosis
Oh,
like
wow.
at the birth, which is
Okay.
very surprising. She even gave me like she saved like the sheet of paper from that medical thing too. But at
Wow.
first, which I've been hearing this with some other stories, you come out and if you have an enlarged tongue, they immediately, and it's a genetic chromosome thing
Hmm.
too, they kind of think Down syndrome at first. So they first said they think I had Down syndrome,
Oh, wow.
but then they were looking at all these things and the doctor's like, no, I think she has this. And then with the feeding, so I was lucky that I right away like they had that. And then mine is a little bit like when I was younger, it was definitely, especially as like a newborn, and
Hmm.
then even growing a little bit, my left side's bigger than my right. My
Okay.
left side is still bigger than my right as an adult. It's about a fourth of an inch
Okay.
difference with my feet, but it's my whole side. So even
Okay.
like the organs, like muscle groups, but um it still gets a little bit less as you're
Okay.
growing in. And when you're doing and everything like that.
Yeah.
I think I had to do at that time, we did ultrasounds until I was 12. So it's a little bit different now
Yeah.
because they can find the specific markers
Right.
and know like who needs to have them more, who is okay this way. Um, so yeah, and then sometimes I would wear my lift, sometimes I wouldn't. Now I sometimes will wear the lift if I'm like doing some kind of cardio,
Yeah.
but I'm a yoga instructor and own a yoga studio,
Okay.
so I do a lot of yoga, which helps. But I did go through probably some PT in my adult years,
Okay.
um, just to kind of figure out after having a child, as
Yeah.
everything is shifting too,
Yeah.
which is normal for a lot of moms too.
Right.
So, I will say BWS has not really limited me from like what I
Good.
want to achieve,
Right.
which is great. And I am really happy to have connected with people because I don't think I didn't meet a single person that I knew had it until 2019.
Wow.
So I just was like, oh, you
Yeah.
know, but now with like social media and everything else, those are the positive things. So we get
Yeah.
to connect. And then my hope is I can share it is a spectrum, so I'm going to have different things, but just share like things that I went through as a teen or as
Yeah.
a young adult. And now as I'm growing into like, I'm going to be in my 40s soon, which I hear are the best year. So I'm
Yeah.
excited for
I'm
that.
I'm close to that too. So I feel you on that one.
But yeah, thank you for asking too. And then would you like to share, like, is there any other things you want to share or even leave our listeners with like one like phrase or inspirational
Oh man.
thing?
I don't know. We always just go back to the Bible verse, like you are fearfully and wonderfully made. So that's
Oh,
pretty
love that.
much it. So she's a hot mess, but it's been fun. I mean, it's been crazy, but it's
Right.
been an
Yes.
experience. Like we wouldn't have it any other way. So yeah,
Same. Yep.
yeah.
Oh, thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome. Thank
so
you.
much for everything. And
Yeah.
thank you for sharing your story. I know it'll touch a lot of people out there and they might even make people feel seen that your daughter's been through something that maybe they have been through
Right.
themselves or that their child has and the similarities there. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.